is it possible for anything at all to exist without it being an experience of consciousness? It is because we have been defining observable phenomena as physical processes. Our language does not bring consciousness into the picture. The scientific language is about describing relationship between things as objectively as possible. And that creates an illusion of knowing, an illusion of understanding. This illusion is not that hard to create. You can define one thing in terms of another, and you need not even know the other, because you are always comparing one to another. The language itself is one of comparison. It always feels like you know something about the entity that you're describing. Take anything, for example, when we talk about the human body, when we talk about the brain, when we talk about the changing seasons, when we talk about time as an arrow moving from the past into the future, and how we go back in time, piecing together experiences. The language is totally physical. We describe everything in terms of physical processes and laws. It is easy to leave consciousness aside. But when you truly try to understand something, define something by itself without comparing it to something else, immediately you will know that it is impossible to forget about defining, to even perceive something without consciousness. What we call physicality is actually an experience. Movement is an experience. Change is experience. Growth is experience. Living is experience. Dying is experience. Darkness is experience. Light is experience. Something is an experience. Nothing is an experience. We have not used the word experience because it's very personal, it's very human. We don't want to color our objective inquiry into the nature of reality with human imagination. So we have left the word experience aside. But we cannot define anything without experience. This has been our challenge. We've been trying to define physicality as a process when it is actually an experience. Now, how do you define an experience without the experiencer, without the entity experiencing? So when the question arises, how can we experience consciousness? You cannot experience consciousness because you are consciousness. You cannot go to the fourth dimension because you are the fourth dimension. You cannot touch it, you cannot taste it, you cannot hold it because you are it. It is like hugging yourself. It's very awkward. It does not make any sense. Because you are it. You are not separate from the fourth dimension. You are not separate from consciousness. You are experiencing everything through consciousness. In fact, that you itself is an illusion. That you you identify with as separate, as your own, is the most beautiful illusion of life. It is the most intoxicating illusion of life. At the same time, the most personal of illusions. Now, why is it an illusion? Because consciousness as an entity, as a totality, is experiencing itself through you and through me. Neither I am experiencing myself, nor you are experiencing yourself. We both are experiencing each other as expressions of consciousness. It's the most beautiful illusion, because when the illusion clears, there is no sadness. You don't lose anything. You don't become small. You don't become insignificant. Think about it. It is only in consciousness that when you disappear, you become more than what you were. It seems a very contradictory idea. If I erase myself, the ideas of me, thoughts of me, my experiences, my individual interaction with my world of thoughts, what else will I do? If all that is gone, I am a nothing, I am a nobody. I am my thoughts, I am my body, I am my world. This is only theoretically, this is the illusion. Because you have not yet experienced that moment of total disappearing of the imaginary you, the imaginary I. It feels like it is a process of erasing yourself. But when you truly erase yourself of thoughts, of attachment to thoughts, you will experience something so transcendental, so complete, that there is no other way to describe it as your true self. This is what Hindus have been doing for thousands of years, referring to the innermost experience as Atman, which is a part of Brahman, the vast mind. Without experience, this is a confusing idea. It is impossible not to create some form of separation between you and that. Because there are two words. You're calling yourself an Atman, you're referring to the vast mind, the source of creation, Brahman. Because in language there is a separation, we can fill this gap with all kinds of imagination, all kinds of imaginary ideas of reincarnation, imaginary ideas of heaven and hell, imaginary ideas of getting from here to there. When in fact, if you remove all imagination, the gap between this and that disappears, because that gap itself is an illusion. The words you are using to describe yourself and the ultimate nature of reality itself is an illusion, because these are not two different things. When you're talking about yourself, when you're thinking about yourself, when you're wanting to go to the fourth dimension, when you're wanting to experience consciousness, keep you aside, you will see it is all happening within consciousness. This is a conversation that is happening inside consciousness. Now, this is the beautiful illusion. Consciousness can have fun by splitting itself into two things, because it is perceptual. Existentially, nothing is changing. Its qualities are exactly the same. It is always a totality. Why should it not have some fun? Fun is, it almost seems like it's interwoven into the very fabric of consciousness. And it is woven in such a way that that fun should not have any real consequences. Fun has consequences for the entity that is part of the imaginary realm. If I'm a consciousness without body, without mind, without physicality, nothing can touch me. As the Upanishads say, nothing, the water cannot wet it, the fire cannot burn it. It's just a way of saying it's a higher dimensional entity. None of our lower dimensional elements can touch it, can experience it. If it is that entity, how are you going to experience it? Nothing can touch it because it is the very thing through which experience is happening. Now, imagine this consciousness wants to entertain itself. We're just using a crude language. It is all a happening. It is not even consciousness sitting there and saying, let me have some fun. It just happens. Consciousness is a totality. It is reflecting on its own totality. Now, that reflection is aliveness, is consciousness, is the experience of being, is the experience of I amness, and a million other things. It all arises from this one experience of totality. As an emergent property, this totality also starts imagining itself as something other than itself. It starts reflecting on individual properties. There is no problem whatsoever for consciousness to start imagining that it is vast, it is beautiful, it is perfect. There is no limit to what it can imagine because that imagination has no consequence whatsoever to its totality. And this imagination doesn't even exist as form. It is just a thought. Now let's say these thoughts begin to interact with each other. Of course, thoughts by themselves don't have any intelligence, don't have any awareness, because they are perceptual entities in consciousness. Everything that we attribute to thoughts comes from consciousness itself. Thoughts are simple repetitive patterns. It is how consciousness interacts with thoughts, how it attaches and detaches from thoughts, how it plays with thoughts is what determines what happens to that thought. So when you pick up an object in our three-dimensional world and you cut it and you look at its inside, of course you're not looking at its inside because the inside is always in consciousness, the fourth dimension. You're looking at a residue of processes that define that entity for you. Let's say you take an apple, you take an orange. Now you cut both of them. The internal structure of an apple and orange are different. Now what determines this? Because both are actualized thoughts. Physicality has no meaning once we accept consciousness to be the fundamental nature of reality. If consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality, then everything is an experience. Because space and time themselves are experiences, are perceptual elements. If space and time itself are perceptual, how can anything being a part of space-time be physical? This would be the hard truth to accept. It will take some time. We will continue to forget that physical objects are basically perceptual, experiential, and we'll keep on going back to defining them in terms of physical things, but eventually we'll realize that it is what it is. So there's an apple, there's an orange. Now the internal structure, both are thoughts, and thoughts are simple repetitive patterns. Why does an apple taste like an apple? And why does an orange taste like an orange? It's because apple is an experience of apple. Orange is an experience of orange. Physicality is what we perceive from our three-dimensional. In consciousness, they are actually two different experiences. In fact, we need to define physicality as a derivative property of experience. Then we will not ask the question, why does apple taste like apple? It is because it tastes like apple, it is apple. It is because it tastes like orange, it is orange. All the fruits are different ways in which consciousness is experiencing itself. That is why we can never pinpoint and say, this is what taste is. This is exactly what the taste of orange is. Chemically, we can define it. We can even put together chemicals and give ourselves a sensation of eating an orange. But something will always be missing. A part of us will know that this is not orange. That is why still we have to grow food. And we can be sure about it that we will never get to a point where we will artificially just chemically create food. Because experientially, we will not like it. Nutritionally, it's fine. It's possible to create artificial things and survive. But what will be missing would be an experience.